The celestial dagger tore through the moon's oppressive atmosphere like a wounded bird, its thrusters stuttering under the strain of a failing engine. Captain Liam O'Connor wrestled with the controls, sweat streaking down his face despite the chill of the cockpit. Alarms blared relentlessly, their piercing tones threatening to drown out his focus. "Come on, baby," he muttered through gritted teeth. "Hold together. Just a little longer." The moon below, Calora, was a barren wasteland, or so the Earth colonial maps claimed. The surface was a patchwork of jagged obsidian ridges and shimmering silver plains, its beauty cold and stark. Liam barely had time to appreciate it as the dagger jolted again, a violent lurch that knocked him forward. With a final roar of defiance, the ship crashed into the ground, skidding across the metallic sands before coming to rest against an ancient, vine-choked obelisk. Silence followed, save for the hiss of venting steam. Liam groaned, pried himself from his harness, and stumbled out of the cockpit. His boots crunched on the strange, glittering ground. "Damn it," he swore under his breath, surveying the wreckage. Smoke curled lazily from the ship's engines, and the faint crackle of electricity whispered through the air. His supplies were limited, and communication with Earth, or anyone else, was a distant dream. Then he saw her. She stood at the edge of the crash site, her form ethereal against the pale, alien landscape. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, reflecting the dying light of the setting twin suns. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed faintly with an otherworldly hue, a deep violet that seemed to peer straight through him. She wore flowing garments of intricate design, their fabric shifting colors as she moved. Before Liam could speak, she fell to her knees, bowing low until her forehead touched the ground. "Prophesied one," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of reverence and fear. "You have come?" Liam froze. Sorry, I think there's been some mistake." The girl didn't move. "No mistake," she said softly. "You are human." The moments that followed were a blur. The alien girl, Syra, as she introduced herself, led him away from the wreckage, through a labyrinth of crystalline formations that seemed to hum faintly as they passed. Liam tried to ask questions, but her answers were cryptic, her gaze filled with awe every time she looked at him. Eventually, they arrived at what could only be described as a city. It was a marvel of alien architecture, its spires twisting skyward like frozen lightning. Bridges of light connected the buildings, and faint, melodic sounds echoed in the air, as though the city itself were alive. Liam couldn't help but be impressed. "You live here?" he asked. Syra nodded. "This is the sanctuary of Calora, home to the Orati people. It is the last refuge of our kind. And you think I'm some kind of, what? Savior?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "The Orati have awaited your kind for millennia. Our legends speak of the day a human would come to free us from the Shroud." "The Shroud?" Her expression darkened. "It is the name we give to the oppressors who enslaved our ancestors and left us stranded here. They are gone now, but their legacy remains. You are the prophesied one, the one who will restore balance and guide us to freedom." Liam's head spun. He wasn't a savior. He was just a captain, a man trying to scrape together enough credits to keep his ship running. But as Syra spoke, her voice filled with desperation and hope, he couldn't bring himself to shatter her belief. The Orati welcomed him like a returning god. They adorned him with ceremonial garments and held a grand feast in his honor. Liam learned that humans had once visited Calora thousands of years ago, their advanced technology mistaken for divine power. When the humans left, the Orati were left to fend for themselves, struggling under the remnants of the Shroud's influence. As the days passed, Liam's skepticism gave way to curiosity. The Orati were not only surviving but thriving in their harsh environment. They had developed intricate energy systems, farming techniques, and methods of communication far beyond what he had expected from an isolated species. Yet something was wrong. Liam began to notice cracks beneath the surface of their utopia. Whispers of dissent reached his ears, Orati who questioned the old prophecies, who saw him not as a savior but as a relic of a forgotten era. There was fear, too, palpable and unspoken, that clung to the air like a shadow. One night, as Liam stood atop one of the city's highest spires, Syra approached him. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, her eyes searching his face. "You don't believe, do you?" she asked. "I don't know what to believe," Liam admitted. "I'm just a man. I'm not a god or a savior." She smiled faintly. "Neither were the ones who came before you, but they gave us hope. They taught us to dream of something greater." Liam hesitated. "What if I can't live up to those dreams?" Syra's gaze turned solemn. "Then we are lost." The words haunted him. Over the following weeks, Liam immersed himself in the Arathi's world, learning their history, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. He discovered that the Shroud's influence was not merely a tale of the past. It lingered in the form of ancient machines buried beneath the moon's surface, devices that still controlled the weather, the crops, and even the minds of some Orati. Liam realized the truth. The Orati didn't need a god. They needed someone to help them break free from the chains of their history. With Syra's guidance, he began to explore the moon's depths, searching for the remnants of the Shroud's machinery. The journey was perilous, filled with traps and ancient defenses designed to keep intruders at bay. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the Shroud's power, and to the answers Liam desperately sought. But the deeper they ventured, the more questions arose. Who had created the Shroud? Why had the humans left Kalora in the first place? And why did the Arathi's legends speak of another force, one even greater than the Shroud, lying dormant beneath the surface? Liam's resolve hardened. He wasn't a savior, but he wasn't a coward either. If there was a chance to help these people, to give Syra and her kind the freedom they deserved, he would take it, even if it meant confronting the darkness that lay at the heart of Kalora. The expedition into the moon's depths was unlike anything Liam had experienced. Syra led him and a small group of Orati warriors through a network of tunnels carved from ancient obsidian. Strange symbols adorned the walls, pulsating with faint, rhythmic light. The air grew colder as they descended, the weight of the planet pressing down on them. Liam's handheld scanner chirped sporadically, its readouts flickering with unfamiliar energy signatures. The deeper they went, the more his human technology struggled to interpret what it was detecting. "These tunnels," Liam said, breaking the heavy silence. "They don't seem natural." "They are not," Syra confirmed, her voice hushed. "The Shroud carved these paths long ago. They lead to its heart." One of the warriors, a broad-shouldered Orati named Kale, glanced at Liam with skepticism. "And what will you do when we reach it, human? Speak to the machines like a god? Or break them with your bare hands?" "Kale," Syra said sharply, but Liam raised a hand to stop her. "I'll figure it out," he said, meeting Kale's challenging gaze. "But if you think I'm not up to the task, feel free to turn around." Kale's expression softened into something almost resembling respect. "You have fire. I'll give you that. Let us see if it burns brightly enough." After hours of walking, the group reached a massive chamber, a vaulted expanse of metal and stone. At its center stood an enormous structure, a machine as ancient as it was alien. It resembled a vast, metallic tree, its trunk studded with crystalline nodes that pulsed with faint light. Branch-like conduits stretched outward, disappearing into the walls of the cavern. Syra inhaled sharply. "The core." Liam approached the structure cautiously. His scanner went haywire, its screen blaring with indecipherable data. Up close, the machine exuded a palpable sense of power. It was not just a piece of technology, it was alive, in some sense he couldn't fully grasp. "This is what's controlling your world?" he asked. Syra nodded. "The Shroud left it behind to ensure our compliance. It controls the storms, the seasons, even the energy that sustains our city. We have lived in its shadow for generations." Liam placed a hand on the machine's cold surface, and a surge of static shot up his arm. He pulled back, wincing. "It's still active." "It always has been," Syra said. "But we do not know how to destroy it." Kale stepped forward, his weapon drawn. "Then we destroy it the old-fashioned way." "No," Liam said firmly. "We don't know what will happen if we just start smashing things. This thing controls everything, right? If we shut it down the wrong way, your entire ecosystem could collapse." Kale scowled but lowered his weapon. Liam circled the core, searching for anything that resembled an interface. As he did, a sudden hum filled the chamber, and the machine's crystalline nodes flared brighter. A voice, cold and mechanical, reverberated through the room. Access detected. Identification required. The Ority froze, their expressions ranging from fear to awe. Syra stepped closer to Liam, her voice trembling. "It speaks." "Yeah, and I don't think it's friendly," Liam muttered. The machine spoke again. Progenitor signature detected. "Welcome, human." Liam's heart skipped a beat. "Progenitor? What are you talking about?" "You are of the creators. Your presence here is expected." "Expected?" Liam exchanged a glance with Syra. "Why?" "The cycle must continue. Your arrival is the catalyst." The air grew colder as the voice continued, its tone devoid of emotion. "Prepare for activation." Without warning, the machine's crystalline nodes began to pulse in rapid succession. The ground shook, and the chamber was bathed in blinding light. Liam staggered back as a new structure emerged from the floor. A sleek, obsidian console covered in glowing glyphs. Syra reached for Liam, her voice urgent. "What is it doing?" "I don't know," Liam said, his pulse racing, "but I don't like it." The machine's voice returned, louder now. "Progenitor, activate the protocol. The cycle demands renewal." Liam stared at the console. The glyphs were alien, but something about them felt eerily familiar. He reached out tentatively, his fingers hovering over the surface. "Wait." Syra grabbed his arm. "What if this is a trap? Or worse," Kale added. "What if this unleashes something we cannot stop?" Liam hesitated. The machine's presence was overwhelming, its demand unyielding. But he couldn't ignore the possibility that this was the key to ending the Arathi's suffering, or plunging them into even greater peril. "What happens if I don't?" he asked the machine. "The cycle will fail. Stagnation will claim this world. Your kind understood this. Do you not?" Before Liam could respond, the chamber shuddered violently. From the far end, a new sound emerged, a low, guttural growl that sent chills down his spine. He turned just in time to see shadows shifting unnaturally, coalescing into hulking forms. "What is that?" Syra gasped. Kale raised his weapon, his voice grim. "The Shroud Sentinels." The creatures were massive, their bodies encased in black, chitinous armor that gleamed in the light of the core. Their eyes glowed with the same violet hue as the Arathi's, but there was no life in them, only cold, unrelenting malice. "They're protecting the machine," Liam said, his voice tight. "No," Syra corrected. "They are protecting the cycle." The largest of the Sentinels stepped forward, its voice a guttural echo of the machine's. "Progenitor, comply. Resistance will not be tolerated." The Sentinels charged, and chaos erupted. Kale and the Ority warriors leaped into action, their energy weapons blazing. The air filled with the sharp crack of plasma bolts and the metallic screeches of the Sentinels as they fell, but for each one destroyed, two more emerged from the shadows. Liam ducked behind the console, his mind racing. The machine's demands, the Sentinel's appearance, the Arathi's legends. It was all connected, but how? And what would happen if he activated the protocol? "Liam!" Syra shouted, firing at a Sentinel that had nearly reached him. "We can't hold them off forever." He glanced at the console, then at the Ority fighting desperately to protect him. The weight of their hope pressed down on him like a physical force. With a deep breath, Liam made his decision. Liam's fingers hovered over the glyphs, trembling with uncertainty. Around him, the battle raged, the sound of Ority warriors clashing with Sentinels reverberating through the chamber. Plasma bolts illuminated the cavern in harsh bursts, their light casting eerie shadows on the metallic walls. Syra's voice cut through the chaos. "Liam, whatever you're going to do it now." His mind raced. If he activated the protocol, what would it unleash? The machine's cryptic insistence on the cycle terrified him. And yet, doing nothing wasn't an option. The Ority were fighting for their lives, trusting him to make a decision that could determine the fate of their entire civilization. Taking a deep breath, Liam pressed the largest glyph on the console. The core reacted instantly. A deep hum resonated from its center, building into a deafening crescendo. The crystalline nodes flared with light, sending cascading waves of energy through the chamber. The Sentinels froze mid-attack, their glowing eyes flickering erratically. The machine's voice returned, louder than ever. Protocol initiated. Recalibration in progress. What's happening? Syra shouted, shielding her eyes from the blinding light. Liam squinted at the console, his heart pounding. The glyphs had changed, forming a swirling pattern that seemed to pulse in time with the core's energy. I think I've started something, he said, but I don't know what. The Sentinels began to collapse one by one, their bodies crumbling into piles of blackened shards. The Ority warriors watched in stunned silence as the remaining creatures dissolved into nothingness. Kale stepped forward, his weapon still raised. Did we win? I'm not sure, Liam admitted. The machine's hum had subsided, replaced by a series of rhythmic pulses that echoed through the cavern like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the console emitted a beam of light, projecting a holographic image into the air. It was a human figure, dressed in a uniform that bore the insignia of the Old Earth colonial fleet. The man's face was weathered but commanding, his voice calm and authoritative. To whoever receives this message, you have reached the heart of the Shroud's control system. My name is Admiral Elias Calderon, and I am one of the architects of this system. If you are hearing this, then humanity has failed to return as planned, and the Ority have endured far longer than we anticipated. The Ority gasped, murmuring in awe at the image of a human. What does he mean? Failed to return? Syra asked. The hologram continued. The Shroud was a desperate measure, designed to protect the Ority from external threats after humanity's departure. Its purpose was to enforce order and stability, but we knew the system was flawed. That is why we left the protocol, a means to reset the cycle and prepare the Ority for self-governance. Liam frowned. Self-governance? You mean? The hologram nodded, as if responding to him. The time has come to release the Ority from the Shroud's influence. The recalibration will dismantle the control mechanisms and grant them true freedom. However, this process will destabilize the moon's environment temporarily. Those present must guide the Ority through this transition. The hologram flickered, its voice softening. You have the power to end their servitude. Choose wisely. Before Liam could process the message, the cavern shook violently. Chunks of rock fell from the ceiling, and the core emitted a series of harsh, discordant tones. The Ority scattered, bracing themselves as the ground heaved beneath them. What now? Kale growled, gripping his weapon. Syra looked at Liam, her expression stricken. The recalibration. It's destabilizing the moon. That's supposed to happen. Liam shouted over the noise. The hologram said it's temporary, but then something unexpected happened. A new figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. A tall, humanoid being clad in sleek, black armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its face was obscured by a featureless helmet, and it carried a staff that crackled with dark energy. The being's voice was a low, resonant growl. You have tampered with forces you do not understand, human. Liam stepped back, his pulse quickening. Who are you? I am the Arbiter, the being said, a sentinel of the true architects. You have defied the natural order. Syra raised her weapon, her voice defiant. This order has enslaved us for generations. The Arbiter turned its head toward her, the gesture slow and deliberate. Your suffering was necessary. Without control, chaos will consume your kind. That's not your decision to make, Liam said, stepping forward. The Ority deserve to choose their own future. The Arbiter tilted its head. Then you leave me no choice. With a sweep of its staff, the Arbiter unleashed a wave of energy that sent Liam and the Ority flying. Syra cried out as she hit the ground, her weapon skidding across the chamber. Kale lunged forward, firing his plasma rifle, but the Arbiter deflected the shots with an invisible barrier. Liam scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. The core was still recalibrating, its nodes pulsing with erratic energy. The holographic console flickered, displaying a series of commands in an alien script. Syra, he shouted. We need to protect the core. She nodded, grabbing her weapon and firing at the Arbiter. The shots didn't penetrate its shield, but they distracted it long enough for Kale and the other warriors to regroup. Liam rushed to the console, his fingers flying over the glyphs. He didn't understand the language, but the pattern seemed to respond to his touch. A new command lit up, its glyphs glowing brighter than the rest. "Liam," Syra yelled. "What are you doing?" "Trust me," he called back. The Arbiter turned its attention to him, raising its staff. Before it could strike, Liam slammed his hand down on the final glyph. The core erupted in a blinding surge of energy, its light filling the chamber and sweeping outward like a tidal wave. The Arbiter screamed, its voice distorted and inhuman, as its form disintegrated in the radiant glow. The Orati shielded their eyes, their voices rising in awe and disbelief. Liam felt a surge of warmth pass through him, a strange but comforting sensation that seemed to erase the exhaustion and fear from his body. When the light subsided, the chamber was silent. The core's nodes pulsed gently, their energy steady and calm. The Orati stood in stunned silence, their faces reflecting a mixture of wonder and hope. "It's over," Syra said softly, stepping toward Liam. He nodded, his shoulders sagging with relief. "The shroud is gone. You're free." As the Orati emerged from the depths of the moon, the surface was transformed. The metallic sands shimmered with renewed energy, and the sky above was a brilliant tapestry of colors. The oppressive storms that had once dominated the horizon were gone, replaced by gentle winds and clear skies. But Liam knew the work was far from over. The Orati had been freed from the shroud's influence, but their future was uncertain. They would need to rebuild, to learn how to govern themselves without the constraints of their old masters. Syra stood beside him, her silver skin glowing in the sunlight. "What happens now?" Liam smiled faintly. "Now? You start fresh, and I'll help if you'll have me." She reached for his hand, her expression determined. "We'll do it together." But as they looked toward the horizon, the faint glimmer of a distant ship appeared, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of unknowns. Weeks turned into months as Liam became deeply involved in helping the Orati rebuild their civilization. With the shroud dismantled, Kilora transformed rapidly. The core, though no longer a tool of oppression, provided resources the Orati could harness to restore balance to their world. Fields of crystalline crops began to grow under steady skies, and once hostile regions of the moon became accessible for exploration. Liam worked tirelessly alongside Syra, Kale, and the Orati leaders, teaching them what he could about the remnants of human technology and strategies for sustainable governance. The weight of their belief in him as the prophesied one never left his shoulders, but over time, it shifted into something less daunting, a partnership built on trust rather than blind faith. One morning, as Liam was working to repair a piece of his crashed ship, a familiar sound pierced the tranquil air. The distant hum of engines echoed across the horizon. His heart skipped a beat as he looked up to see a gleaming starship descending from the clouds, its lights flashing a universal signal of peace. The Orati gathered, murmuring with excitement and fear. Syra stood beside Liam, her violet eyes wide. "Is it more of your kind?" Liam nodded slowly, shielding his eyes as the ship landed on a smooth plateau. The ramp lowered, revealing a group of humans clad in the sleek, utilitarian uniforms of the Earth Colonial Alliance. At their head was a woman with sharp features and a commanding presence. "Captain Liam O'Connor," she called out. "That's me," Liam said, stepping forward, his tone cautious. The woman extended a hand. "Commander Elena Dre, we received your distress beacon. It took us a while, but we're here to bring you home." The words hit Liam like a physical blow. Home, Earth, a chance to return to his life among the stars, to reconnect with everything he had thought lost. But as he glanced back at the Orati gathered behind him, at Syra, who had been his guide, partner, and more, he felt an ache in his chest. Commander Dre studied him. "You've made quite the impression here. The Alliance will want to hear your report. And," she hesitated, glancing at the Orati, "we may be able to offer aid to these people, now that we know about them." Kale, standing nearby, crossed his arms. "We don't need saviors. We've had enough of them. Dre raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Syra touched Liam's arm. What do you want to do? Liam was silent for a long moment, torn between two worlds. Finally, he turned to Dre. Give me a moment. That evening, under Kalora's twin moons, Liam and Syra walked together through the shimmering fields. The air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of energy that lingered after the shroud's destruction. You're leaving, Syra said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. Liam sighed. I don't want to, but I have to. Earth is my home, Syra, and if I don't go back, I can't help bring more support here. Syra stopped and turned to face him, her silver skin glowing softly in the moonlight. You've already done so much for us. You gave us freedom. That is something we could never repay. He reached out, taking her hand. I didn't do it alone, and I'll come back, I promise. If you'll let me. Her gaze softened, a small smile playing at her lips. We'll be waiting. The following morning, the humans prepared to depart. The Orati gathered to bid farewell, their voices raised in a hauntingly beautiful song of gratitude. Liam embraced Kale, who grumbled something about humans being too sentimental, and clasped hands with Syra one last time. As he ascended the ramp of the starship, Liam looked back at the Orati, at the shimmering spires of their city, and at Syra standing tall among her people. He felt a pang of longing, but also a deep sense of hope. The ship's engines roared to life, and Kalora grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck of silver against the vastness of space. Back aboard the Earth colonial ship, Liam recounted his story to the stunned crew. His tales of the Orati, the Shroud, and the core were met with awe and disbelief. But his insistence that the Orati needed support, not interference, was heard and noted. Weeks later, as Liam stared out of a porthole at the endless stars, he thought of Kalora, of Syra, and of the people he had left behind. He knew their journey was just beginning, as was his. With a deep breath, he turned back to the console in front of him, where a map of the galaxy glowed faintly. Somewhere out there, Kalora waited, and Liam O'Connor would find his way back to them.